We're here joined today with Lauren Drummond, who's a lawyer at Holding Redlich. Welcome, Lauren.
Thanks, Jodie.
We'd love to have a chat to you today about everything legal regarding, parental leave and returning to work. But before we dive into that, let's start with a little bit about your role.
Yeah, sure. Well, I'm a workplace relations lawyer. I've been practicing for just over 5 years, primarily acting for employers, but across the whole spectrum of workplace relations and safety issues. So that covers basic entitlements like underpayments, ensuring the correct workplace policies are in place, and also dealing with disputes that might arise in the workplace, whether that's from bullying to after someone might have been dismissed and raising issues about that.
Yeah, right. I'm sure you're extremely busy. So talk to us about the basic entitlements during parental leave and what women should expect.
Yeah, sure. So everyone has an entitlement under the Fair Work Act to paid parental leave. It falls under the National Employment Standards. So there's 10 minimum standards of employment that you're afforded in Australia. Parental leave is one of them, and that's available to all any person who falls pregnant and will become the primary caregiver, or in circumstances of adoption. And after 12 months after being with your employer for 12 months, you're entitled to apply for unpaid parental leave for a period of 12 months.
Right, so that takes you through to the 2 years.
Correct. So one period of 12 months, and after that's elapsed, you can apply for a further period, or you can break it down any way you wish. It's more that it has to be taken in a continuous period.
So that's a great summary in terms of, overall entitlements for paid parental leave. Let's now talk about a couple of other areas. Safe job.
Safe job. So once you've made an application for parental leave, there are a number of obligations and requirements that your employer will need to comply with. One of them is the safe job requirement, and that basically just means that you are entitled to be given a job if for any medical reason you can't perform your usual job. If there's an available position of a similar nature but doesn't pose the same risks to your health and safety, then your employer should take steps to put you in that role.
Yeah, right. And what about your return to work guarantee? That's essentially your right to return to your old role.
Correct. So your employer is obliged to keep your position available for you. Encompassed within that is a obligation to inform the person who might be undertaking your role for a 12-month period that it is a parental leave role and that it may end after 12 months. Mm-hmm. And so you're entitled to return to your role after the parental leave finishes, and that has to be the same position, or if that position no longer exists, then a position of similar salary and status.
Yeah. So if you find yourself in a position where you've been on paid parental leave and then you go back to work and all of a sudden your role no longer exists, or they're trying to offer you another role, what should you do?
That's an interesting one, Jodie. Because also encompassed in parental leave is an obligation to consult with you during your parental leave. So if there's anything that occurs that is going to have a significant effect on your pay or the nature of the role, such as being moved to part-time, or that it might be made redundant, there's actually an obligation for your employer to consult with you while you're on unpaid parental leave.
So that's a great point. Can you expand on what consult means?
Yeah, it means that an employer has to take all reasonable steps to advise you about the change and consider any suggestions or that you might have in relation to the effect of that change. But the main thing is to keep you informed and in the loop about what's happening.
Yeah, okay. And what about keeping in touch days? Something I love. What are the entitlements around keeping in touch days?
So keeping in touch days, you're entitled to 10 keeping in touch days as part of your parental leave. It's not so much of an entitlement, but more as a way of bringing the employer and the employee together to ensure that during the parental leave, the employee is still up to date about what's going on in the workplace. There's a couple of different ways that they might want to be involved. Employers might include them in a training day or in a planning day, or even just invite them to a social function just so that they know or are across what's going in the workplace for when they return from parental leave.
Yeah, terrific. And what about consultation with an employee who's on unpaid parental leave?
In terms of if their position is being made redundant?
Yeah.
So there's two simultaneous obligations. There's if the position's being made redundant and the person falls below the high income threshold, which is currently $142,000, there's an obligation to consult under a modern award about the changes to your position, but also and that applies regardless if you're on parental leave or not. But if you are on parental leave, there's an obligation to consult with you about your position, keep you abreast of those changes.
Yeah, great. So that's a great summary in terms of entitlements. I think the main takeout for women is to know that, you know, there are rights, and if they're not sure, that they should seek advice. And what would be your recommendation in terms of the best place to reach out to seek the right advice?
There's a couple of different ways you might want to go about it. Going straight to the source is a great place to start. Check your workplace policies, what obligations your employer imposes on itself. And they might also state where you can go to make further inquiries or complaints if you have concerns. The second place that you would usually recommend someone go is either the Fair Work Ombudsman website or the Victorian Equal Opportunity and Human Rights Commission website. Mm-hmm. They have a breadth of information and also a helpline that you can call if you're unsure if your rights are being trampled on, or if you have any queries about what's going on in your workplace.
No, that's great. And I'm assuming that that's then replicated across the different states?
Absolutely. There's anti-discrimination legislation in each state and territory in Australia, and there's also the Commonwealth legislation, which is the Australian Human Rights Commission, and they have a separate website as well.
Yeah, great. Thank you.